Today's daf is Chulin daf Pei Beis, and we have 4 lines from the top of daf Pei Beis Amid Aleph, Ve'egla Arufa Lav Shchita Ru'uye. Today's daf is being learned as a Schus Refuah Shalema, V'chava Miriam Bas Malka Freda, and Shlomo ben Chaya Leah. So we're moving along in Perek Oisoi V'Espenai, dealing with the laws of Oisoi V'Espenai, which all emanate from one pasuk in the Torah, tucked away in Parshas Emor. The pasuk says, "Vayikra perek chav beis pasuk chav ches v'shoir oiseh oisoi ve'espenoi loise shchatu b'yoymech." Specifically, the Mishnah on Daf Pei Aleph Amud Beis mentioned one of the more famous shitos of Rab Shimon in Shas. So Reb Shimon, underrated, has some very mechudishtige positions scattered throughout Torah Shabbat Peh. One of them is in the laws of Shchita, where Reb Shimon holds that a Shchita she'ena ruya lo yishma Shchita. It's negeya kamasugi sashas. It's negeya the sugya in Shas that we're learning right now. According to Reb Shimon, if a Shchita she'ena ruya is not a Shchita, that would mean that if somebody would shecht either oisai or benai, and it would be a shchita she'ena ruya, it wouldn't beget the lav in the Torah of oisai v'esbenai loisai shchatu b'yemechad, because the most basic criteria for that lav is that it be a shchita, and if shchita she'ena ruya loishma shchita, k'muvin, it would not be a violation of that law in the Torah. And the Mishnah gave a whole bunch of examples of where it would be nogeya, where this halacha of shchita she'ena ruya would practically apply in the world of oisoi ve'esbenai. Now, the tzad hashava of all the examples that the Mishnah gave was all of the shchitos are such that they're not matter the basar b'achila, and that really is the definition of a shchita she'ena ruya. So any shchita that doesn't do what Masechtas Chulin says a shchita has to do is a shchita she'ena ruya, and in the world of Reb Shimon, not a shchita. What were the examples of the Mishnah? If somebody shechts an animal, v'nimtza treifa. If somebody shechts an animal, lavoi dezara. If somebody shechts a paras chatas, also known as the para aduma. If somebody shechts a shor haniskel of Bavakama fame. If somebody shechts a egla rufa. All of these cases are such that the basar, even after the shchita, is going to be asab achila. Hence, it's a shchita she'ena ruya. Therefore, it's mentioned in this Mishnah on Daf Pei Aleph Amud Beis. Either way, the Gemara now is going to have a very brief discussion about one of these 5 cases that the Mishnah mentioned, and that is the Egla Arufa. Says the Gemara, the Egla Arufa lav shchita ruya. Is that true that if somebody would shecht the Egla Arufa, it would not be a shchita ruya? Now we know what was supposed to happen with the Egla Arufa was, it was supposed to be beheaded. It was supposed to have an arifa done to it. We're discussing where a shchita was done. The Mishnah is clearly suggesting that shchita would not be mata the basar b'achila. It would be a shchita she'ena ruya. But the Gemara is questioning that premise. Is that in fact true? We learned in a Mishnah, and this Mishnah is in Perek Egla Rufa, which is talk about tucked away in the very end of Meseches Soita. So what does Soita have to do with Egla Rufa? So you have to chaz a Soita to know the answer to that. But Perek Egla Rufa is in Masechta Soita, and over there's a Mishnah that says Nimtza Hoyreg. What would be if the Egla Rufa was set aside? So all the Rabbanim are coming out, and they're going to now embark upon this procession. And lo and behold, before they had an opportunity to behead this Egel, they found the Hoyreg. The murderer was found. The case, the mystery was solved. Says the Mishnah, if it happened actually before the actual beheading, the egla is just a good old-fashioned egla, and you can send it back into the field, let it graze, give it back to the pastach, and treat it like any animal. What do you see from here? You see that an egla arufa doesn't become an egla arufa until you do the actual arifa. Where do you see that? Because nimtza hoirik actually te orev ha'egla It's a regular kosher animal, which would mean that if somebody would shech the egla arufa, which by definition would had to have happened before the arifa, because once you do the arifa, it's an avela, you can't shecht it anymore. At that point, you would think it would be regular kosher meat. If that's the case, it would be a shchita ruya. It's afraid the Gemara, agashmaka kasha. How could you tell me egla arufa lav shchita ruya? And it's based on the fact that an egla arufa we know is asabana. It's clear from the Mishnah Masechta Saita that the only time it becomes asabana is after the harifa. Where do you see it? Because nimtza hoirik acheloi teyarefa egla teitzei v'tira ve'eder. Amar Rav Shimon ben Lakish, Rav Shimon Rabbi Yanai. So Rav Shimon ben Lakish said the name Rabbi Yanai. This kasha is such a strong kasha. You have to say egla arufa in a Mishnah. You have to take the words egla arufa, add in a Mishnah, mekesais. There's no way to learn this Mishnah with the words egla arufa, because the Mishnah seems to be suggesting that the egla arufa was something that is aser ba'achila ubahana, even if it had a proper shchita, and that is not the case. If it had a proper shchita, it would be mutter, which means the shchita would be a shchita ruya. But the Gemara asks a kasha. Nice teretz. But umi Amar Rabbi Yanai hachi. Could it be Rabbi Yanai that said it? Right? Who said it? Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish mishum Rabbi Yanai. The names matter. Could it be that this is something that Rabbi Yanai said? Amar Rabbi Yanai. Rabbi Yanai said something else about egla rufa that would seem to negate the probability that he would have said this. What did Rabbi Yanai say? Gvul shamati. I heard a gvul. I heard a certain boundary as it relates to the Isser Hana of the Egla Rufa. V'shachachti. I can't remember what it is. Meaning, I remember hearing that when it comes to the Egla Rufa, specifically the fact that it's asabana, it's not always asabana. Amol yeh, amol nish. There's some sort of gvul. There's a line that's drawn in the sand where up until there it's still mutter. It's only once it crosses that it's going to be asr. But to be honest with you, shachachti, it happens. I can't remember, said Rabbi Yanai, what that gvul is. Stating that, Rabbi Yanai continued and he said, V'nosvin chavraya. However, the Bnei Yeshiva misvara suggested the following. When the egel descends upon the Nachal Eson, that's the arena where this is all going to happen. At that point, it becomes aser. Up until then, still mutter. Once it's there, it's already aser. What's the Gemara's kasha? Now, if it's true that Rabbi Yanai was asked the question that how do you reconcile the Mishnah in Chulin Pei Aleph Amud Beis that says the Egla Rufa is a Shechita Sheina Ruya with the Mishnah in Saitim Mem Zayin Amud Aleph that says Nimtza Hoirik Achlei Teyari for Egla Teitzei V'Tira Be'eder. And Rabbi Yanai's teretz was such a doichik, Egla Rufa in a Mishnah. He literally crossed out one of these two Mishnayos because he had no eitzah. It can't be, because you know what Rav Yanai L'shitase should have answered? Literally, what he should have said was, Kan koidim yerida, kan lacha yerida. Being that Rav Yanai himself had a gvul, and the gvul was up until it went to the Nachal Eson versus after it went to the Nachal Eson. So you know what Rabbi Yanai should have said? Both Mishnayos in are b'mkoyim medes. There's no reason to be moichik any one of the two Mishnayos. How do you reconcile the stira? It's very posh. The Mishnah that says Achelei Teyare for Egla, that's referring to not so much Achelei Teyare for Egla, but it's referring to until it went to Nachal Eson. Until it went to Nachal Eson, at that point, it's still going to be okay. The shchita would be a shchita ruya. That's what it means. Teitzei v'tira be'eder. Whereas the Mishnah in Chulin that says it's a shchita she'eina ruya is talking about after already descended l'nachal eson. So why would Rabbi Yanai l'shitase have to say ain't a Mishnah? So what's the Gemara's kasha? The Gemara's kasha is not on the teretz egla rufa ain't a Mishnah. That's a plausible, albeit doichik the teretz. The question is miyam Rabbi Yanai. Could Rabbi Yanai have been the one that said it? Rabbi Yanai l'shitase would have had a much better answer. So there's no way Rabbi Yanai would have given that teretz. Amar Pinchas Breder Rav Ami. So Pinchas Breder Rav Ami said, "Anami shmeid Rav Shimon ben Lakish Mastin Allah." You're right. 100%. I have to be honest with you that I understand there's this Messiah floating around here in the Pumbedisa that it's Rab Shimon ben Lakish in the name of Rabbi Yanai. We actually had a different Messiah. Rab Shimon ben Lakish said it on his own. He didn't say in the name of Rabbi Yanai. Oh, if that's the case, okay. Rish Lakish didn't hold of Rabbi Yanai's shtickle Torah. In his mind, when the Mishnah says it means literally at teyar. And if that's the case, it's always going to be mutter to shecht it before the Arifa. Our Mishnah says not that way, which would suggest that you have no choice but to say Egla Rufa ain't a Mishnah. But it's not Rav Yanai that said it, it's Rish Lakish that said it. But the Gemara has a kasha with this as well. Rav Ashi said, Kavina Bei Rapapi, when we were in the Beis Medrash, Rapapi Kashalon, Rapapi asked us the kasha even on the Nusach Rish Lakish. By the way, if you can appreciate a little bit what's going on over here, Rav Ashi is doing his holy avodah and trying to figure out, is this Reb Shimon ben Lakish Mishum Rabbi Yanai? Is it Reb Shimon ben Lakish himself? So Rav Ashi is working this through, and he's in the Beis Medrash or a papi, and he's probably telling him over what's going on over here. We know it's not Rish Lakish Mishum Rabbi Yanai, it's probably Rish Lakish himself. But Papi said, I have a problem with this also, Rav Ashi. You know why? Because I'm Reb Shimon ben Lakish. He could have been Reb Shimon ben Lakish would have said this. But Itma, we learned Tzipoirei Mitzayra as it relates to the two Tzipoirim that the Mitzayra used to bring as part of his ritualistic Tahira, purification. So we know these Tzipoirim were also Asabana. But the question is, when did they become Asabana? Rabbi Yochanan said, Mishash Shchit is from the time of the Shchit. It's from the time that they were purchased. And we have a Messiah that what was Pshana Rish Lakish? Why is Rish Lakish told that the Tzipoirim Mitzayra became Asabana already? Mishash Lakicha, Gamar Kicha, not Mistei Ephraim, Meyagla Rufa. He learned it with Gzeira Shava. Kicha from the Egla Rufa. What's the Gzeira Shava? That just like the Egla Rufa becomes Aser Bahana already Mishas Lakicha, so too the Tzipoirim Mitzayra are going to be the same way. What's the bottom line? You see from here that Rish Lakish also holds that there's an Isra Na on the Egla Rufa before the Arifa. Now Rashi speaks out that it was Pasha to Rapapi, that when would that be? Like, when would that Isser come about? Probably it would be the Gvul Shamati Bavishachachti that Rabbi Yanai had heard. Rabbi Yanai had heard that there was a Gvul before Nachal Eisa and after Nachal Eisa, and that's probably what Rish Lakish holds as well. It's before Nachal Eisa and after Nachal Eisa. But the bottom line is, Rish Lakish's Shita is that the Egla Rufa has it before and after. If that's the case, the same kasha we had, that why would Rabbi Yanai say Egla Rufa ain't a Mishnah if he has an easier way to explain this, it would be true on Rish Lakish as well. Rish Lakish clearly holds like Rabbi Yanai. How do you know that? From his Gzeira Shava, Kicha mi Egla Rufa. It's predicated on the fact that the Egla Rufa has an Isra Na Mishas Lakicha, which again Rashi says must mean not Lakicha Mamish, but from the time that it descends upon the Nachal Eisa. But the bottom line is, why would Rish Lakish give this teretz and say in a Mishnah? It doesn't make any sense. So again, it can't be Rish Lakish Mishem Rabbi Yanai, because Rabbi Yanai had a much better teretz. It can't even be Rish Lakish Alein, because Rish Lakish also had a much better teretz. So it's interesting. This is like punktish, right? If it was any other Amir in the world, b'shem another Amir in the world, sounds like a decent teretz to me. I mean, obviously, but it would work. But Rish Lakish, no. Mishum Rabbi Yanai, also no. The Freik the Gemara again. If that's the case, somebody seemed to have said Egla Rufa in a Mishnah. It's not Rish Lakish, it's not Rabbi Yanai. Who is it? Alam Rabbi Barabba, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Egla Rufa in a Mishnah. You want to know who it is? It's Rabbi Yochanan. And by the way, if you're holding Cheshbon, it's Rabbi Yochanan l'shitasai. Rabbi Yochanan holds Tzipoirim Mitzayra me'imasai nesarin. It's Mishash Shchita. Rish Lakish said it's Mishas Lakicha. My time of the Rish Lakish, Gomar Kicha me Egla Rufa, implying that there's an Isra Na of the Egla Rufa while it's Michaim. Rabbi Yochanan doesn't hold that way. Why? It's not clear. But Maskanas Hagemara, it seems like it's probably Rabbi Yochanan l'shitasai, because Rabbi Yochanan learns the Mishnah in Saitim Mem Zayin Amar Aleph, actually Tayarif Egla Teitzav Tir Be'eda is literally, so it's always mutter. If it's always mutter, well then two things. Number one, if it's always mutter, our Mishnah must be Ein a Mishnah, and also, by the way, l'shitasai, there's no Gamar Kicha me Egla Rufa. That's why, as it relates to the Tzipoirei Mitzayra, the halacha is, it's going to be us, and not Mishas Lakicha, because there's no Kicha. It's going to be us, or only Mishas Shchita. Either way, we now return very much to our regular program, and that is the basic halachas of Oisai ve'Espanai. So let's just chazer over two things before we start the next two Mishnayos. Number one, as it relates to halacha of Oisai ve'Espanai, even though in the Torah it says Oisai ve'Espanai, Loisai Shchatu b'yem echad, so it sounds a little bit like the Isser is first Oisai and then Benai. The same is true if it's done in the reverse order. The Zelba Issa Deiraisa. It doesn't matter if it's Oisai Vesbenoi or if it's Benoi and Oisai. Second point that's worth chazering, and that is, when it comes to this Oisai Vesbenoi, it doesn't matter if it's one person that shechts both or if it's two people that shechted to. So if the same Ruvain shechts oisai and then benoi, he's over oisai ves benoi when he shechts benoi. Or if Ruvain would shecht oisai and then Shimon would shecht benoi, it would also be a problem of oisai ves benoi. And again, this is true even on a d'oraisa diga level. It's true on the malchus diga level, right? Just to bring out this point. Oisai ves benoi, benoi v'oisai, in either case, the second shchita is going to come with a malchus. And again, loishna, if one person did both shchitas, or if two people did the two shchitas, the one who does the second shchita is in all cases going to get malchus. Says the Mishnah, Shaim shalachu paru b'na. If there were two people that brought two animals, and it happens to be a mother and her son, a para ubena, iza shalakach rishon yishchait rishon. So they can't both shecht on the same day. It's going to be oisoi ves benot. The second one's going to get malchus. So who has the schus to go first? Whoever bought the animal first. Yishchait rishon. Let's say the second guy went and he preempted the first person. Zacha, he's going to be zacha. Amar Rav Yosef immediately clarifies in the Gemara. He says, "L'inyan dina tonight." This Mishnah is not a Yeridea Diga Mishnah, even though we're learning Masechtas Chulin now, which is very much Yeridea. This is not a Yeridea Diga Mishnah. This is a Choshe Mishpat Mishnah, meaning from the laws of Yeridea. I don't know. Whoever shechts first, second person's going to have a problem on his hand. He's going to have to wait until tomorrow. It's a mechus hazman. But from the standpoint of Choshe Mishpat, there's something called a schus mammon, and whoever bought it first, he has that schus mammon. Now, the Mishnah concluded and said, "V'im kadam hasheni zacha." If the second person went and he preempted, he's going to be zacha. Tani, we learned in a brayso, "Im kadam hasheni," not just zacha. The brayso is always wordier, sometimes much wordier, sometimes even a little bit wordier. It says not zacha, harei says zariz v'niskar. So what does that mean? Zariz means he was a zariz the lo yavad isura. He's a zariz as in Zrizas in Sefer Mesilas Yesharim, right? As in Rivka Imenu, who was a Zariz. As in Avram Avinu, who was Vayashkim Avram Baboiker. We learn from this, Zrizah Makdim el Mitzvahs. So this person, even though he was second, if he went first, he ends up being a Zariz. What does it mean, the Le'avad Isura? Because if you're going to be second, there's a possibility you may end up doing an Aveira. It comes out, this animal that you have in your herd, for the next 24 hours, it's like having Chazar. It's a very, very bad thing. So there's actually a certain madrega of Avodas Hashem to be the Zaris, to go ahead and go first. Additionally, V'niskar, what did the Bryce mean when it said Niskar? The Kachal Bisra. When he has dinner tonight, you have to wait until tomorrow. I get to eat today. And as a result, I profited. I end up benefiting. That's what it means, Niskar. Now, from the Bryce, it sounds like, right? Just let's meditate on this for 1 second. So you have two people. One person buys the parrot, the other person buys the child. Whoever goes first, that's the person that has the schus to shecht first. So you would think the second person is supposed to be a good edel balmidos, and he's supposed to say, okay, it's his schus. I'll wait until tomorrow. I have this potential of doing an aveira. I mean, that's what we're in this world for. I'll fight the good fight as it relates to not shechting this animal. I am not going to have meat until tomorrow. It's the 9 days anyways. What are you worried about? You'll eat meat Shabbos Nachamu. You'll have another yapchik. So, it shouldn't be such a big deal. Zok the Mishnah, Zok the Braisa, no, forget. It's a mile to go and muscle your way through. And if you do it, you mamish be mekayim the Mesilas Yesharim madregas, and not just that, you're a niskar. A little hard to understand. The Achronim struggle with this a little bit, and the Achronim say that it's only true if you do this in an up and up way. Meaning, you reach out to this person who bought the other animal, and you tell him that, I would like to go first. Meaning, if you do this in a civil manner, then you're a Zaras Veniska. But if you do it like a Bulvan, you're not a Zaras Veniska. You're a Shvacha Balmidis. You have to start learning Mesilas Yesharim from the Akdama. You're not even holding by Zrizas yet. Either way, Zok the Mishnah weiter. Shachat Para, Va'achakach Shnei Baneha. So the next part of Daf's going to be a lot of fun. In the event that, if you like Cheshbon and hard Gemaras, if somebody goes ahead and he shechts a Para, and afterwards, shechted her 2 children. So this is a whole family. There was a para, and she has 2 sons, and this person went, shechted the para and the 2 sons. But first the para and then the 2 sons. Says the Mishnah Seifik Shmainim. This person's going to get Malchus Tzim Sveitamal. He's not only going to be Seifik Arba'im, one-time Malkus, but he's going to be Seifik Shmainim, he's going to get Malkus twice. What's the reason? Because as soon as you shech the para, there's an Isser Oisei Vespenoi on each one of the children. So the first child, you will over Oisei Vespenoi, Loisei Shchatu B'Yemechad. The second child, you will over Oisei Vespenoi, Loisei Shchatu B'Yemechad. You will over it twice, hence you're going to be Chayiv Malkus twice. Shachat Shnei Bona, says the Mishnah Geshmak. What would be, same exact case, but in the reverse order. This person went and he shechted the two sons of this para, and afterwards he went and he shechted the mother. In that case, he's only going to get Malkus one time. What's the reason? Because now he did one Maisa Avera, not two Maisa Averas. Now, there are two sibois for this Maisa Avera, right? What's the Maisa Avera? You're not allowed to shecht Oisa Ves B'nah. Over here it was B'nava Oisa. He shechted two B'nahs. So being that he shechted two B'nahs, so there's a double mechayiv of Isser on Oisai, but at the end of the day, the Isser is one Isser. You did one Maisa Isser, and therefore you're only going to get Malkus one time. Shachta ve'ezbita ve'ezbasbita. What would be if somebody went and he shechted 3 dairas? So this is Mamish the Ramban in his Pirush al HaTorah when he talks about the reasons for Oisa Vespenai. So one of the reasons he gives is Hakiras Amin. I mean, this person really went all out. He took out 3 dairas. Shachta ve'ezbita, ve'ezbasbita, grandmother, daughter, and granddaughter. Seifik Shmainim, the halach is he's going to get Malkus twice, meaning he's going to chap 80 patch. What's the reason? This is very simple. Because he was over 2 Oisei ve'ezbenahs. There was an Oisei ve'ezbenah, grandmother, and her daughter, mother, and then there was another Oisei ve'ezbenah, mother and daughter. So because of the 2 sets of Oisei ve'ezbenah, he's going to be Chai Malkus twice. What would be if Shachta, he shechted the grandmother, the esbas bita, and the granddaughter, the achakach shachat bita, and then he went and he shechted the daughter. Now, when he shechted the daughter, what emerges is that now there's 2 sets of oisei ve'espenaz that was slaughtered, stating that it was one ma'isa. So because he's only going to get 40 malchus. Sumches oimim mishum rameir, sumches and the name rameir. That soifik shmoinim, you're going to get malchus twice. Now Rashi speaks out that this sumchis that says Soifik Shmoinim is not only a comment on the last case in Mishnah, we'll recap the Mishnah in a second, but it's also a comment on one of the earlier cases of the Mishnah, and that is where it was Shachat Shnei Baneh V'achakach Shachta. The Mishnah said Soifik Arba'im because it was one Maisa Shchita on the mother. Sumchis is saying on that as well that you're going to be Soifik Shmoinim. So let's do the recap. There are 4 cases in the Mishnah. The first case of the Mishnah is Shachat Para V'achakach Shachat Shnei Baneh. So what's the halacha? The halacha is Soifik Shmoinim. So if somebody shechts a para and then doesn't just shecht one of the children, shechts 2 of the children, he's over Oisei Vespenoi twice. As a result, he's going to get Malkus twice. He's going to be Soifik Shmoinim. That's easy. What would be if he was Shachat Shnei Baneh V'achakach Shachta? So first he shechted the children and then he shechted the mother. So this is the way Rashi learns. A machlokes Tanakama and Sumchis. According to the Tanakama, Soifik is Arba, because he did one Maisa. According to Sumchis, you're going to be Chayiv twice. Why are you Chayiv twice? Because when you shechted now the mother was chayiv from 2 sibos, because you had shechted 2 of the mother's children. So being that there are 2 sibos for Isser for this mother, that's a reason for you to be chayiv twice. What was the next case in the Mishnah? Shachta vesbita vesbasbita, 3 sets, you're going to be soifik shmoinim because there's 2 sets of Oisei vesbenai. What would be, however, if you shechted the grandmother, daughter, and then you went ahead, or grandmother, granddaughter, and then you went ahead and you shechted the daughter? So here too, it's machlokes Tanakama and Sumchis. According to the Tanakama, you soifik as arbaim. Why you Seifik as Arba'im? Because you did one Maisa. According to Sumchis, it's true you did one Maisa, but through your one Maisa, you have 2 sets of Oisei Vespenah, and that's a reason for you to be Seifik Shmoinim. Now, as it relates to the Lumdis, and emphasis on the word Lumdis, of this machlokes between Sumchis and the Tanakama, this is something that the Gemara is very much going to discuss on Amud Beis. But before we get to the Lumdis of Sumchis, the Gemara starts with a kasha, and it's really a ha'ara on the Mishnah we just learned, it's a ha'ara on the previous Mishnah, it's a ha'ara on something that we've mentioned many times throughout the parak, and that is that when we talk about the Isser Oisei Vesbenai, even though in the Torah it says Oisei and then Benoi, but the order is lav dafka. If it's Benoi and Oisei, it's going to be the same thing. And the Gemara asks the kasha, Amai Oisei Vesbenai Amerachmana V'loi Benoi V'Oisei. Now it's interesting. Why did the Gemara ask the kasha on this Mishnah? And we could have asked on the previous Mishnah, literally 5 lines ago. Here too, it was clear that there's an Isser, Oisav es Benai, and Benai v'Oisai. Right? How do you know that? Shnaim shalakhu paru Benah. So they're duking it out right now. Who gets the schus to shecht first? Clearly implying that the Isser would be either way. So why are we asking it over here? It's Pasha. Because in the previous Mishnah, it just said that there was an Isser to go Oisav es Benai, Benai v'Oisai. Over here you see you get Malkus, right? It's clear from this whole Mishnah that you're going to get Malkus regardless if it's Oisav es Benai, Benai v'Oisai, which means that it's included in the pasuk of the Torah, literally on the biblical levels. If that's the case, right? The Gemara, the Torah says Oisav es Benai, it doesn't say Benai v'Oisai. So Gemara says, we learned to the Bryce. The answer is in the Bryce. Oisav es Benai, Oisav es Benai. And the pasuk itself, it sounds like the Isra is only Oisav es Benai. Oisav es imay minayin. How do you know if it's the other way, right? Oisav es imay is the same as Benoi v'Oisai. How do you know if it be Oisav es imay? When it says Lo yisishchatu, harei kan shnayim. Lo yisishchatu is a lashon rabbim. It's coming to be marba 2 things. Okay, so what does that mean? So it's a little tricky. If a person would shech the parah, then if somebody would shech the mother, or if somebody would shech the child, shnayim achreinim chayavim, those latter 2 people would be chayiv. In other words, if there were 3 sheichtim, one person shechted the parah, and then somebody shechted the child, somebody shechted the mother, first person didn't do anything wrong. But the latter 2 people did, and that's lois shchatu, lashon rabbim, that's what it's coming to teach me. So from the lashon rabbim of lois shchatu, I know that it's not only oisnei ves benah, but it's benoi v'oisai as well. Freit the Gemara, how could you tell me that? Hamibayle the gufay. Doesn't that word lois shchatu just tell me the lav? Lois shchatu, if it was extra, then I would understand it's coming to be marba 2 examples of Isser. Doesn't matter if it's Oisav es Benai or Benai v'Oisai. But Leisa Shchatu is just Pashup Shan in the Pasuk. Oisav es Benai, don't shech them b'yoyim echad. Mar says, it should have said Lois Sishchait. What the Torah should have said was that once you shecht Oisai, there's a lap of Lois Sishchait on Benai. My Lois Shchatu, the Lashon Rabbim, grammatically is extra, and it's coming to teach me Loishna Oisav es Benai, Loishna Benai v'Oisai. But the Gemara says, I'm still not happy. Because Rachman had the Torah said I would have thought chad in trei loy. Maybe what loy sishchat was coming to teach me is another halacha that's axiomatic in Perek Oisav es Benai, and that is, it doesn't have to be the same shaychet. That even if there are 2 shaychetim, you're going to have this halacha. So Lois sishchatu is even if there are 2 sheichtim, meaning because had it said lois sishchet havamina, I would have thought chad in trei loy. Chad what? Chad sheichet, as opposed to 2 kasrach mana lois sishchatu afilu trei. So the Gemara says in diktuk kim lichte brachmana. What the Torah should have said was loy yishchatu with a yud. My lois sishchatu with a saf. Shma mina tarti. Rashi says loy yishchatu with a yud would be mashma. They should not be slaughtered. We're not even looking at it from the standpoint of it shouldn't be slaughtered. Rashi's lashon is lo yal yedei echad v'lo yal yedei shnayim lo yiyu nishchat. That's what the Torah is coming to tell me. So if all the Torah wanted to tell me was lo yishna echad lo yishna shnayim, it would have said lo yishachatu. What's lo yisishchatu? The saf is coming to teach me that v'oid. Number 1, 2 shaychtim, and number 2, it doesn't matter if it's Oisav es Benai or if it's Benai v'Oisai. So these 2 ideas, again, that permeate the whole parak, and that is that Oisav es Benai, the order is lav dafka. Additionally, that Oisav es Benai, it doesn't matter if it's 1 person that does it or if it's 2 people that do it. How do I know all this? I know from the same word in this passage. There's not a lot of words to work with, right? The whole parsha, this whole mesechta is v'shar Oisav es Benai lo yisishchatu b'yemechad, but it's the word lo yisishchatu. It could have said lo yisishchait or lo yishachatu. Sishchatu teaches me these 2 halachos. Exhale. So before we start this next piece of Gemara, which is going to get into the machlokes, sumchis, and the chachamim, we need a tiny bit of an introduction. So we're familiar with the concept of Malkus, very much the topic of this Mishnah, Seifik Arbam, Seifik Shmoinim. When does somebody get Malkus? In the event that a person is over a loisase, sheyesh boy maisa, there were Eidim and Hasra. The person was warned, thou shalt not do this, because if you do, trust me, you're going to regret it. Then the halach is, if he says, bring it on, then we bring it on. And he ends up getting Malkus. That's the basic halacha. What happens if a person is over multiple lavin, each of which have with it a a punishment of Malchus. How many sets of Malchus is he going to get? Now, in the event that he was over 5 different lavin, he ate chazer, he ate nevela, he was a nazir and he drank wine. I don't know. If it's a whole slew of averas, then it's obvious. For each avera that he does, he's going to get an independent set of malchus. What if he did the same avera multiple times? So he was a nazir that drank a revius yain and another revius yain and another revius yain, clearly an alcoholic, but another revius yain. So what would be if that nazir went ahead and did that? Is he going to get one malchus because it's the same avera, or is he going to get multiple sets of malchiyos because each revius is its own avera? So it's a mission. It's a mission Masechtas Nazir, featured prominently in the third parak of Masechtas Makis. It depends on how many times he got hasra. If he got one hasra and he took down a bottle of wine, doesn't matter how large that bottle of wine is, the halacha is that he's going to get one set of malchus. If, however, there were multiple hasras, then for each hasra, assuming he went and drank a revius after the hasra, he's going to get an independent set of malchus. So if he does different averas, each avera, assuming there was hasra, you're going to get malchus. If he did the same avera, then the hasras are mechalik. To the extent that there was one hasra, he's going to end up getting one set of malchus. If there were multiple hasras, then he's going to get multiple sets of malchus. There's one other important caveat to this halacha, and that is that in the event that this person went and he did the same avera over and over and over again with one hasra, which based on the rules that we just laid out would mean he should only get one malchus. But if he did the averos with gufen muchlakim, he did them with different gufen, so then the halacha is he would be chayev for each one of these gufen that he went ahead and he did an avera. So, for example, if somebody was boil nida and he was boil nida again, and again. So theoretically, let's assume there's malchus for the chayvei krisis for being boil nida now, which there are. But the halacha is so for each guf that this person was now boil, even though it's all the same misanida, and even though it was all one hasra, but the gufin with which he did the avera, they too are going to be mechalik. So again, what's the kitzur Shulchan Aruch as it relates to this? This is mamash yisaidi for so many sugis ashas, but definitely for pei beis and beis Masechtas Chulin. If a person's over a loisase sheyesh by ma'isa be'edim ba'asra, he gets malchus. What if he's over multiple averas, all of which are loisase sheyesh by ma'isa be'edim ba'asra? For each avera that he does, he is going to get malchus. What if it's the same avera? So it depends on the hasra. If there was one hasra, he's going to get one set of malchus. If there were multiple hasras, then based on how many hasras there were, that's how many sets of malchus he's going to get. In the vernacular, the hasra is mechalik. If there was one asra, same avera, but it was with different gufin. The gufin are also mechalik, and then too the halach is he's going to get multiple malchus. So different averos are mechalik, hasrois are mechalik, and gufin are also mechalik. Now this Shulchan Aruch relates to the carbon chatas as well. Me'inyan le'inyan, ba'isa inyan. So when there's somebody bring a carbon chatas, in the event that he doesn't avera b'shoigi, that had he done b'mezid, he would have been chayiv karas. What happens if somebody did multiple different veros, all of which require a chiyuv chatas? So obviously, he's going to have to go ahead and bring a chatas for each aver that he did. What if it was the same aver? So he did the same aver again and again and again. Every single time he did it b'shoigig. How many chatos is he going to bring then? So there, it depends on how many halamas there were. So if it was done with one halama means he was in some state of amnesia, right? He didn't chap what was going on. Halama is another way of saying shkaga. So to the extent there was one halama, like he forgot today is Shabbos, and Mimela, he treated it like a regular weekday. So then it's considered one halama. He's going to end up bringing one chatas. If, however, there were multiple halamas, meaning he did the aver b'shoigig, and then he said oops, and then he did it again b'shoigig, and then he said oops, right? He keeps on chapping himself. So for every halama he's going to be chayv. In other words, halamas are to the chatas what hasrois are to malchus, right? Hasra is something that you give to make someone aware of what he's doing. In the world of malchus, we have to be amazed. You would have to have hasra. In fact, the Gemara says, "Lo nitna hasra elo lahavchen ben shoigig l'mei." It's the whole point of hasra. So hasra is a sugya malchus where you have to be amazed in it. Halama is a sugya in chatas, but fakir, you can't be amazed, you have to be able. It's mamish the antithesis of each other, 180 degrees. But the bottom line is, when it comes to amazed the sugya, like Malkus, it's how many hasrois were there, how many mazes were there. When it comes to the chatas, it's how many halamas were there, how many shkagos were there. Now, just like when it comes to Malkus, there's an idea that the gufen are mechalik. When it comes to chatas, you have the same exact idea that the gufen are mechalik. So again, side with regards to Malkus and side with regards to chatas, different averos are mechalik. The asra in the case of Malkus and the halama in the case of chatas are mechalik. And even where it's the same avera and there was one asra or one halama, there's an idea that the gufin are going to be mechalik as well. What do we need to chazer over now very quickly from the Mishnah, just to segue right into the Gemara? In the Mishnah, we had 4 cases. Seifig Arbam, Seifig Shmoinim, Seifig Arbam, Seifig Shmoinim. 2 of them were a point of contention between Sumchis and the Chacham. What were the 2 cases where Sumchis and the Chacham argued? The first case was where somebody shechted 2 children of a parah and then shechted the parah. According to the Chachamim, you're going to be Seifig Arbam. Why are you going to be Seifig Arbam? Because you did one Aveira, and being that you did one Aveira, one Maisa, you're going to get 1 set of Malkus. According to Sumchis, no, you're going to be Seifik Shmainim. Because in as much as it's true you did 1 Maisa, in as much as it's true you went ahead and you did 1 Avera, but there were 2 Sibois of Isser. This mother is Asr to Shech because you shechted this child and that child. And that's enough somehow to be Mechayev to Malkus. The other point of contention in the Mishnah between Sumchis and the Chachamim, what would be if somebody shechted the grandmother, the granddaughter, and then he went ahead and he shechted the daughter? So according to the Chachamim, even though when you shechted the daughter, it comes out you shechted 2 doiras of Oisai Vesbenai, but at the same time you're only going to be Seifik Arbam because you did 1 Maisa. 1 Maisa, you're going to get 1 set of Malkus. According to Sumchis, you're going to be Seifik Shmoinim because even though you did 1 Maisa, but through the 1 Maisa that you did, what emerges is you now have a whole family that you wiped out. Akira Samin, there's 2 sets of Oisai Vesbenai, and that's enough for you to be Seifik Shmainim. Says the Gemara. Amalei Abaye the Rav Yosef. So Abaye turns to Rav Yosef, like he so often does in Talmud Bavli. And he said, my time of the Sumchis, I was learning this Mishnah over here, Chulin Pei Beis Amud Aleph, and I was trying to understand, I was trying to fashtei Shita Sumchis a little bit better. I was a little bit unsure. I had a chakira how you do it. In fact, how to understand the imik of what Sumchis is trying to say. I had to start it. Kasava Sumchis is pshat in Sumchis that he holds achal shnei zeisei chelev be'elam echad chayiv shtei chatois. That if somebody would eat 2 zaisim of chelev and he would eat them be'elam echad, he would be chayiv 2 chatois. Now, if somebody eats 2 zeisim helamach, based on the introduction that we said earlier, would you be chayiv 2 chatois or would you be chayiv 1? You would be chayiv 1. That's the general rule. But Abaye is trying to understand Shita Sumchis, and he sees in Shita Sumchis maybe not that way. Thus, thinking out loud, Abaye says, is pshat in Sumchis, that Sumchis holds that this whole idea of 1 halama means 1 chatas, maybe Sumchis doesn't subscribe to. And by the way, if it's true when it comes to halamas and chatos, it's going to be true to hasrois and malchus as well. We're not learning a sugi of chatas, we're learning a sugi of malchus. Oisaves b'noi is not a chayvi krisos, which comes with a chatas b'shoigig. It's a chayvi malchus, which comes with malchus b'mezid, right? So if you got bum, that's what's going on. So we're just using achal shnei zeis echel b'helamach chayv shtei chatos as the mashal. The nimshal would be that if somebody went ahead and he did 2 aveiros, same aveira, behasra achas, he would also be chayiv 2 malchus. This is pshat in Sumchis, that Sumchis holds achal shnei zeis echel b'helamach chayiv shtei chatos. Now, if that's the case, ubedinu de l'shamin alma. Really, there's no reason for Sumchis' halacha to be tucked away over here in Chulin Pei Beis Amud Aleph, because his halacha of Chayv Shmoinim is not unique to this case. It's a very global halacha. It should be somewhere in the 3rd parak of Masechtas Makos. Ubedinu de l'shamin alma. Right? Really, it should have been somewhere else. Right? The kamashmalan baha. The reason it's mentioned over here is lo yidiyach l'keicha de Rabbanon. It was only to teach me the shita de Rabbanon, the afal gaf de gufa muchlakim. Even though over here is an element of gufa muchlakim, what was the element to the Gufa Machlakim. So again, we're going to have to pick one of the two cases. Just to keep this simple, let's pick the second case, where Sumchis Mefurish said that you soifik Shmoinim, and the Tana Kama said you can be soifik Rabban. So when you shechted the Baba, and you shechted the Enokel, and now you go ahead and you shecht the middle, being that middle, that mother, right, is Aser Sai Mitzad the grandmother, and Sai Mitzad the granddaughter, so we see it up a little bit as Gufa Machlakim. And if you see it up as Gufa Machlakim, that would have been a reason based on the introduction that used to be Soifik Shmoinim, even according to the Rabban. So that's why we mentioned in this case. Not to teach me the biggest Chiddush in Sumchis. The biggest Chiddush in Sumchis would have been to tell me, Ochal, two Kizesim of Nevela, Basra, Achas, you're going to be Soifik Shmoinim. The reason we're talking about a whole case, a case that has an element of Gufa Machlakin, as we'll see in a second, that's only the Koicha de Rabbana, that the Rabbana hold, even where there's an element of Gufa Machlakin, still the halach is going to be Soifik only Abba, or maybe because Sumchas Achashnei Zeis, Chedel Behelam Echad in Chai Belach. But Alma Sumchas holds that if somebody would eat two Zeisim of Chedel Behelam Echad, would be Chai only Achas, which would mean that as it relates to Hasra and Malchus, it would be the same thing. So why does Sumchas hold over here Soifik Shmoinim, V'hach Taima Hoyel Gufa Machlakim? It's based on the fact that it's Gufa Machlakim. In other words, Abaye learned the Mishnah. Abaye said, I understand the sheet of the Chacham. I understand the sheet of the Chacham. It's consistent with the rules and regulations that govern Hilchas Malchus. Why? Because this person right now, when he shechted that middle dar, he did one Maisa. One Maisa meant one Hasra. Has to be. And if that's the case, one Hasra, you can only be Chai Malchus once. You can tell me Toiris van Heim Pizmargen. At the end of the day, it's one Maisa, one Hasra, 40 Maisnas and one Hasra. If it's the same Aveira, you're going to only get Malchus once. So certainly one Maisna with one Hasra, you're going to only get. And how do you know it's one Hasra? Because it's one Maisa. So obviously it's one Maisa, one Hasra. There's no question in the world that you should be Chayiv. The Shai is what's Pash Pshan and Sumchas. Why is Sumchas hold you Chayiv too? What happened to the fact that one Hasra means by definition you could be drinking wine all day, every day. Still, one Asra, you're only going to get Malchus one time. So how could Sumchas hold Soifik Shmoinim? So Zoktabai, maybe Sumchas doesn't hold to this whole Hakdama. That whole introduction, not in Sumchas' world, right? Maybe he's a Tanu Polig, he doesn't hold of this whole Torah. Again, universally accepted in Shas, that introduction, but maybe not in the world of Sumchas. Oidilma says Abai, maybe not. Maybe Sumchas is masking to all of that. He just holds this is different. Because this is like Gufa Machlakim. And like we mentioned in the introduction, Gufa Machlakim is one of the exceptions to the rule. Averis Amachalik, Hasrois Amachalik, and Gufan Amachalik. Now, is this really Gufa Machlakim? This is not someone that was boiled two midas. That's true. It was one Maisa Shchita on one animal. But there's two Sibas, Zakrashni of Isser. The Sibas is coming mitzad the Baba, and it's coming mitzad the Enokel. So being that there's two Sibas of Isser, maybe that's viewed as Gufa Machlakim, and if that's the case, maybe that's Pshat and Sumchas. It says Pshat and Sumchas that he undermines the whole introduction. He doesn't hold that you can only be Chayiv one Malchus if there was one Asra. One Asra, I don't know, every time you do an Aver, you're going to be Chayiv. Say here too, there were Kilu, two Oisei Vesbenois that just took place. And it's for that reason you're going to be Chayiv Shtayim. Or maybe he's masking to the introduction. He holds that this case of Oisav Esbenoi is Gufa Mechakim. It's not your classic, quintessential textbook example of Gufa Mechakim, but I could hear that it's on the spectrum of a Gufa Mechakim, and maybe that's the reason. According to Sumchas, you're going to be Chayiv, Shmoinim, either way. Who asked this question? Abaya asked it to Rav Yosef. Amalei Rav Yosef turned to Abaya, he said, in. What's in? Right? There were two tzadim. Kasavar, achal, shnei zeisei chelev, behelam echad, Chayiv shtei chatois. Pshat and Sumchas is not that this is Gufa Machlakim. The first side, he doesn't agree with the whole introduction. He holds Helam echad tu chatois, which means that it relates to Malchus. Hasra achas, you're going to be Chayiv tu Hasra. It says the Gemara Mimai. How do you know this? Now, let's set this up because this is going to take us all the way until the Mishnah on Daf Pei Gimel Avanav. This is going to take us till the end of the Daf. So, the premise, the unspoken premise of the Gemara is that Rav Yosef would not have said such a big chiddush. Why create a sumchis that's a tanu polik, even though he has the credentials? But still, like you don't pull out that badge unless you have to. So why would we assume that sumchis is being chaylik on something that everybody knows is true, unless we were sort of forced into it? And that's the question, mimar. Rav Yosef must have had a hechrach. He had a hichacha from somewhere that this is Shita Sumchas. And really, the way the Gemara is going to try to answer this question, this very simple question of Mimai, is by trying to find a Shita Satanan somewhere in Shas that seems to not hold of the introduction. That holds Achal Shnei Seisei Chelav Behelam Echad Chayv Shtei Chatois with its counterpart as it relates to Malchus. If we can find such a Tana, then it's plausible to assume that we could put a name to the face and we could say who is that Tana at Sumchas. And really, from here until the end of the daf, the Gemara is going to take 3 cracks at it. We're going to try 3 times to find a shita. A shita, I don't do what I but we're going to try to find a shita that holds that one hasra can beget several malkios. If that's the case, it's yutachin and it's mistaber that anonymous Tana over there is really Shita Sumchis over here. Says the Gemara. So again, why would Rabbi Yosef have assumed such a big chiddush to fast the meruba, which usually is like to fast in Shita Sumchis? Probably because he had a Shita Satanam somewhere that holds this way, and Rabbi Yosef is making a nice sushta. Rabbi Yosef, who's the great Sinai, see the end of Brachas and the end of Hayrius, is now being Madame Milsula, and he's saying it's Yitachin that Sumchis is the author of that Shita. So says the one with the Tanya, because we learned to the Braisa, Hazoreya Kilayim Loika. You didn't see double. That's what it says. Hazoreya Kilayim Loika. If somebody plants Kilayim, he's going to get Malchus. Says the Gemara, my Loika. What does Loika mean? Ilema Loika Achas. Does Loika mean like achas, and really what the Bryce is saying is that if someone is a rare kalaim, he gets malchus pshita. I mean, if someone's a rare kalaim, he's over loisa sheyesh by ma'isa. I don't need a special Bryce to tell me he gets malchus. But my kalaim, right? This sounds like shema, right? What is kalaim? Why does it say the word kalaim twice? What's pashup in this Bryce? It's a rare kalaim. Loika, help me out, please. Ella says the Gemara pshita, right? There's Ellas and there's Ella pshitas. Ella pshita, shtei malchus. Obviously, this person was zayrea kalaim since Sveit and Mal, and loika doesn't mean like achas, it means like a stein. Okay, so now already we're saying something that maybe I want to know. We're already holding a shtickle on the derech to say a chiddush. But the Gemara says, "But let's work through the case a little bit better." Is it talking about where the person was a rei kalayim, and then he was a rei kalayim a second time? Ubishtei hasrois, and he was warned before each time he was a rei kalayim. Tanina, this is also pashat. It's also pashat. It's a mefurish mishnah. Makis chaf aleph amar aleph. No, shoyz yain kolayoyim. A nose that was drinking wine the entire day. Einoi chayev. Right, we always say that's why he was makabel naziris, because he drinks wine the whole day. But we don't have to go back to that. So einoi chayev ela achas. So this person is only going to be chayev one malchus. Oh, if they told him al tishtevu shoyse, chayev kalachas. This is the mishnah that says that asrois are machalik. But the bottom line is that if there were 2 asrois, it's pasha you're going to be chayiv malchus twice. I don't need this Bryce as a rare kalayim bezeh chazeh b'shtei asrois like Stein. Elo says the Gemara again pshita. It's also part of the Elo pshita. Elo pshita that not only was he rare twice, but it was bevas achas. He must have done them both literally at the same time. Uba Hasra achas, which means that there was one Hasra, right? The guy's about to be Zerei Kalayim, and he warns him, and he goes there, he's Zerei Kalayim twice. And what does it say? You're going to be Chayiv 2 times. Mani, who is the Tana that holds that one Hasra, if you go ahead and you're Zereya, you're going to be Chayiv 2 times? Is it the Rabbanon of our Mishnah? Who's chaylik with sumchis? That holds that when you shech the mother, after you shechted the grandmother and the granddaughter, you're only going to be like arbaim. Can't be. Because hashta, ma hasam the gufa muchlakim. Madach in our Mishnah, where there's a tzad of gufa muchlakim, because there's 2 gufim that are the sibos of this iser. Patri Rabban, and the Rabbanan say you're parted from the second mal because you only give me chayiv 1. Hach over here, weird. There's no gufa muchlakim like kolshkein certainly. Now, by the way, why is it so pashut that there's no gufa muchlakim? You planted 2 sets of kalayim, so why should that not be gufa muchlakim? So all the Rishonim say the reason is gufa muchlakim only makes sense where each guf is chashiv. So 2 human beings or even 2 animals would be considered gufa muchlakim, but 2 seeds is not considered gufa muchlakim. Gufin are mechalik if the guf is a davar chashiv, but another garanim is not enough of a davar chashiv to say that that's going to go ahead and be able to be mechalik. But either way, it can't be that according to the Rabbanan that you're soifik arbaim in our Mishnah, over here you're going to be like it twice. It must be, it's the Rabbanan's bal plucked at sumchas, and just like sumchas holds soifik shmainim in the Mishnah and oisav es benoi, he's going to hold as a rare kalayim like you're going to get twice. what do you see from that? If that's the case, Rabbi Yosef, you see that what's the Yisaidas Shita Sumchis? It's not because he learned up Oysav Esmino Yizkuf Mechlakim. It's because he holds that you can be Chayim Malchus twice, even for one Asra, and that's why L'Shitasa he holds the same thing when it comes to Kalayim. So says Rabbi Yosef, Mimai, why did I learn up in Sumchis that the Yisrael Shita Sumchis is not al Tzkufim Muchlakim, but it's because he holds Achal Shnei Zeis Echel B'Helam Echel Chayiv Shtei Chatois. I didn't see it in the Mishnah. In the Mishnah wollte ich gesagt Tafasta Mur Tafasta. I would have taken on the lesser Chiddush. Why make Sumchis be Chaylik and call it Torah Kula? But I know it from somewhere else because I know there's a Bryce, there's a Re'eh Kalayim Loika, and it's Pshita where he was a Re'eh Kalayim twice. It's also Pshita where it was one Hasra. And if still it's shaykh b'chayv twice for one asra, must be there's such a shita. The only shita I know it could be a sumchas. That's probably pshan and shita sumchas in the Mishnah in Chulin Pei Beis Amal. But the Gemara says like it's not muchach Rabbi Yosef. There's no hechrich. There's Abaya talking, and Abaya tells Rabbi Yosef there's no hechrich. L'olam I'll tell you Rabbanan. L'olam I'll tell you that the brisa that says Hazereh Kalayim Loika is not sumchas. There is no such shita sumchas. Though you say the sumchas by us is because he also gufim mechlakim. Don't go there. Sumchas never said one asra you can be chayv two malchus, and it's going according to Rabbanan, and it's talking about where the two zriyos happen. B'zeh achar zeh. It's talking about where it happened, B'zeh achar zeh. So what's the kasha? If it happened B'zeh achar zeh, we said then it's pshita, you're going to be chayiv malchus twice. Because if it happened B'zeh achar zeh, and it was b'shtei asrois, so, right, that's the Mishnah Makis. Al tish, then there were two asrois, for sure you're going to be chayiv twice. That's the Abaya, no, there is a little bit of a chiddush in the world of Kalayim. It's a Kalayim de chiddush. Milsa agavurche kamash malon dikitrei gavne Kalayim. That there are two types of Kalayim. Ulafuke with Rabbi Yoshia and it's like Rabbi Yoshia. Rabbi Yoshia said, "Achi is rechita usair v'chayt ma peilusia." The only time a person's chayv a Kalayim is if he plants a chita usaira and a chartzon, and it's then and only then, if he did it in one shot, that you're going to be chayv for the laws of Kilei HaKerem. Kamash malon hazereh Kalayim. The chizara chita v'chartzon. That was the first Kalayim. Usaira v'chartzin, that was the second Kalayim. Nami v'chayv, you're going to be chayv. So it's talking about B'zeh achar zeh, and there's no chiddush in the world of Asrois and Malchus. Pasha, you do two Averis, one after another with two Asrois, you can be chayv Malchus twice. The chiddush is it was two Averis. Because in the world of Rabbi Yoshia, it would have been one Aver. Because Chita, Saira, and Chartzin is one. Okay, it's not Kalayim, but it's not Chita, Saira, and Chartzin. If you hold Chita v'chartzin is one, and Saira v'chartzin is one, well then Chita v'chartzin, Saira v'chartzin is going to end up being two, and that's the chiddush that you like Stein. It's not a Mesechtes Makis de Chiddush. It's a Mesechtes Kalayim de Chiddush. The bottom line is, La'olam it's talking about where there were two Asrois, it's going to leave the Rabban, has nothing to do with our Sugya, and as a result, Abaya successfully was Doicha, Rav Yosef's first attempt to try to find a Tana that holds that Achal Shnei Zeis Echel B'Helam Echel Chaim Shtei Chatois, which would be then a sipa to say that maybe that Tana Sumchis and would emerge as a mechudesh understanding of Shita Sumchis in our Mishnah. Says the Gemara, Tashma. Rabbi Yosef now is going to try to bring another Mekar to have such a Tana. And this is from a Mishnah. And this Mishnah is Lekaman. It's in Perek Gid Anasha, Daf Tzadik Vav Amnal. So it's discussing the laws of Gid Anasha. The Perek Gid Anasha is coming on. And one of the Machloikisen that feature prominently in the Perek is that there's a Machloikis, Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim. If somebody eats the two gid hanashas. So the gid hanashas is in the thigh of the animal. So the animal has two thighs. Hence, there's two gid hanashas. So if somebody goes and eats the two gid hanashas, is he going to be chayiv malchus twice for eating the two gid hanashas, or is he only going to be chayiv malchus once? Now, this is a little nuance, because really what the Gemara is going to do now, and the Gemara is going to actually do it twice in the balance of the daf, is really totally in having a havana in a sugya that we don't learn yet. Rashi tells us so. But the Gemara has a little bit of a discussion why Rabbi Yehuda holds that if you eat the two gid hanashis, you're going to be chayiv one, you're not going to be chayiv two. It's an ibaya in the Gemara. One side in the Gemara is because Rabbi Yehuda holds that only one of them is chayiv. Well, that's for sure. The Rabbi Yehuda holds that only one of them is chayiv. However, the Gemara has a suffix whether it's Rabbi Yehuda knew which one is chayiv, or Rabbi Yehuda was misupik which one is chayiv. If Rabbi Yehuda was mesupik, which one was chayiv? So that would explain why if you eat one, you can't get malchus. If you eat two, now already you can get malchus. How many malchus are you going to get? You're going to get one malchus, not two. Because from the two that you ate, you know you for sure ate the wrong one. The Gemara has another tzad. Rabbi Yehuda knows which one you chayiv for, and it's the right one. not the left one, it's the right one. The right thigh, not the left thigh. And it's for that reason, if a person goes ahead and eats two, he's only going to be chayiv one. Not because it's a suffix amimon of shach ate one, but because only one of them is chayiv. Rabbi Yehuda even knows which one is chayiv. It's the right thigh that's chayiv, not the left one. Good. Either way, says the Gemara, in the event that somebody went ahead, he ate a kezayis of the rechte gedanusha and a kezayis from the linke gedanusha. So if he gets malchus twice, Rabbi Yehuda says, he only gets malchus once. Hey, what's the case? What is the physical case? Where according to the Tanakama, shmoinim according to Rabbi Yehuda Arba. Is it talking about bezeh chazel b'shtei asrois? Is it talking about where he ate first the right gedanusha, then the left gedanusha? And not just that, there was asra before he ate the right one, there was asra before he ate the left one, which would explain why, according to the Tanakami, you say fik shmoinim, right? There were two asrois. As a result, you're going to get malchus twice, even though it's the same aver, it's gedanasha, but you did it twice. As a result, you're going to be fik shmoinim. But if that's the case, my time with the Rabbi Yehuda, why does Rabbi Yehuda hold bechlal that you're going to get malchus? Hasra sofiki, it's a hasra sofik. V'shamina le Rabbi Yehuda dam hasra sofik loishmei hasra. And we know shnitas Rabbi Yehuda is that hasra sofik loishmei hasra. Now, this question of the Gemara, that it should be Asra Safik, so Rashi is on the side of the Gemara. Come on, this is where you have to know the Gemara later a little bit better. It's on the side of the Gemara that Pshat in Rabbi Yehuda, why you only like Arbam is because he's Masafkale. He doesn't know if it's the right one or if it's the left. There is such a side in the Ibay. So on that side, that Rabbi Yehuda is Masafkale, you shouldn't even get Arbam if it happened. Again, there's a clear side in the Gemara that the Yisod of Shittas Rabbi Yehuda is, he is Masafkale, which one of the Gedanosh is Asa. If that's the case, you wouldn't get even Arbam if it happened b'zeh achazeh b'shtei asros. Because shittas Rabbi Yehuda l'shitas is asra safek lo yishmei asra. So just play it out. Person eats the right gedanasha. You warn him, don't eat what you're about to eat. Maybe it's not asra. And then you eat the left one. Don't eat what? Now, Mumarav Shach, you did an Avera, but each Asra was an Asra Safik. So that can't be the case. Being that the Gemara has it sad that the Yisrael of Rabbi Yehuda Shita is Misafkale, and you see Rabbi Yehuda holds, you get at least one Malchus. It can't be it was two Asras, because each Asra would have ended up being an Asra Safik. So it has to be by definition that there was one Asra. Now, how do you know Rabbi Yehuda holds, this is a little parenthetical, that Asra Safik Lo Shmei Asra, so the Gemara digresses for a few lines. I'm going to the Brayso. Because the case is talking about where someone didn't know who his father is. He narrowed it down to two people, but he doesn't know who his father is. It's either Reuven or it's Shimon. Now, you're not allowed to hit your father, you're not allowed to be Makal your father. This person went ahead and he was Makkah both people. So Maman of Shach, he got his father. He could have a chazav, he could have a or he cursed one and then he cursed the other. Or he hit both of them at the same time. He was Makal both of them at the same time. Chayiv is going to be Chayiv because Maman of Shach, he was Makal Makal his father. Yehuda says, if he did Chayiv is going to be Chayiv. If he did Potter, he's going to be Potter. Why is he Potter if he did because he needs Asra to be Chayiv, and each Asra is Asra Safik because he can't tell the person, don't hit this man, he's your father. Maybe he's not. And then afterwards, maybe he's not. So, being that it's Asra Safik, so again, you can't tell me that the case of the two Gid Hanoshes, where according to the Tanakam Yechayv Shmein, according to Rabbi Yehuda, going to be Chayv Rabban, is talking about where it was two Asrois B'zeh Chazeh, because then in Rabbi Yehuda's world you couldn't be Chayv Rabban. On the tzad, the Pshan of Rabbi Yehuda is it's a suffix. Each Hasra would have been a Hasra Safik. You know Rabbi Yehuda's Shita from Makah of Avim and Makal of Avim is Hasra Safik. Lo Yishmei Hasra Ela Pshita Zok. It's Pasha. It's Pasha. No other way to learn this. Ela Pshita B'vas Achas B'asra Achas. Has to be talking about where the case was where the person ate the two Gid Hanoshes B'vas Achas, and there was one Hasra. Interesting. So it was one Asra, and still the Tanakama says Yichayv Shmoinim. Freit the Gemaru, man Tanakama. Who's the Tanakama? Let's rope it back to our sugi. Lem Rabban the Pliga the Sumchis. Is it Rabban that Sumchis who hold that when you shech the mother, after you shechted the grandmother and the granddaughter, the halach is you're going to be chayiv one set of malchus hashed. Over there. The gufa mechlakim, where there's a tzad gufa mechlakim. Patri rabbanon, the rabbanon say you pater from the second malchus. Hach over here like kolshkin el alav, it has to be sumchase. And it must be, if you're going to put a name to the face of this mishnah, it must be a sumchas. There's no one else that we're aware of. Must be that the havon of this sumchas is that sumchas holds that achal shnei zeis echel be'elam echad. The halach is you're going to be chayiv. Shnai, but the Gemara says lie. I'll tell you, it's talking about this Mishnah where the person ate the two Gid Hanoshes b'zeh, and it's going according to the Rabbanan, right? V'Rabbanan. There's nothing to do with Sumchas, because there is no such shit as Sumchas. If that's the case, if it's b'zeh, what was the issue? The issue was, how you understand Rabbi Yehuda? How do you understand that Rabbi Yehuda holds you're going to be Seifik Arbon? And is it sad that it's all Misafik? Each Asra is Asra Safik. The Tana, the Mishnah holds, Ki Idach Tana Rabbi Yehuda, like another Tana in Shitas Rabbi Yehuda, the Amar who holds Hasra Safik, Shema Hasra. So in as much as we just brought a Klara Braisa that says Rabbi Yehuda holds Asra Safik, Lo Shmei Hasra, Hika Ezeh v'chazar v'hika Ezeh, Kila Ezeh v'chazar v'kila Ezeh, Potter, but there's another Tana in the world of Rabbi Yehuda who holds that Shitas Rabbi Yehuda is that Asra Safik is Shema Asra. Who's that? Tana, the Tanya, very famous brisa. It says in the Torah, "V'loy seisiru mimenu ad boiker, v'anoisem mimenu ad boiker be'eish tisroifu." So this is a pasuk in Parshas Boy. Now I'll leave over from the Korban Pesach, and then the Torah says you leave over from the Korban Pesach be'eish tisroifu. Says the brisa, "Ba kosavlitin aseh achal loy saseh." So as much as the Torah said there's a loy saseh of noiser, but immediately afterwards, the Torah doubled it and followed it with an assay to teach me that there's no malchus divrei Rabbi Yehuda azeh Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Yehuda holds you don't get malchus on the lav of noisa because it's a lav shenitak lasei. Rabbi Yaakov says loy min Hashem uzut. That's not the reason. The reason there's no malchus by noisa is not because it's lav shenitak lasei, but rather because it's a lav she'im by Maisa. What do you see? You see that Rabbi Yehuda holds that were not for the fact that Noisa was a lav she'nita klasei, you would get Malkus on the Issa Noisa. Shtel sich the fraga, how could you get Malkus on the Issa Noisa? What's the havamina that you should get Malkus on the Issa Noisa? The only thing you get Malkus is if there's Asra. How would you give Asra on Noisa? Just try to visualize it. You have a person who brought the Korban Pesach and there's a little bit of basar from the Pesach sitting around. You go over to him and you tell him, you better eat this right now because if you don't eat this right now, you're going to chap fresk, right? Well, it's not true. What do you mean? Look at your watch. Right? You still have a couple of hours. So that Hasra is not going to be a real Hasra. But maybe that's Hasra Safik. Hasra Safik, Lo Yishma Hasra. From the fact that Rabbi Yehuda holds that theoretically, hypothetically, were not for the fact that Noiser was a lav nitik lasnei, you would get Malkus on the lav of Noiser. Vaistois, it's Shayach Hasra. The Shayach Hasra must be Hasra Safik Shema Hasra. Says the Gemara, La'olam. The Mishnah is talking about where is Bezach Hazeh. According to Rabbi Yehuda, how can you be Soifik? Even Arba'im, L'chura, it's Hasra Safik. And Rabbi Yehuda Shita is Asra Safik Lo Yishma Asra. That's one version in Rabbi Yehuda Shita. There's another version. Our Tana is Savala Ki Hai Tana in the world of Rabbi Yehuda that holds Asra Safik is really Shema Asra. One last Tashma. So this is already a brisa. It's talking again about Gid Anasha. It's talking about where somebody ate 2 Gidim, but the case was where he ate 2 Gidim from 2 yerechos, from 2 behemoths. Now it was the same yerech, so it was the same side, but it was 2 gidim from 2 different behemoths. Seifik Shmoinim, you get Malkus 80 times, meaning 2 sets of Malkus. Rabbi Yehuda says, Eini Seifik Ela Arba'im, you only get Malkus 1 time. Now Rashi says that in that sugya that we didn't learn yet, that we keep on referring to, the Gemara is actually Machriya the Shaila in Rabbi Yehuda Shita, the previous Rabbi Yehuda, whether Rabbi Yehuda holds that it's a suffix which one of the Erechos is Gid is going to be Asner, or he knew for sure it's the right one from this brisa right here. This is, Rashi says, Umeha Pashtina Beper Gid Anosh, the Pshita the Rabbi Yehuda B'Yemen. That Rabbi Yehuda knew which side it was and it was the right side. Because if he doesn't know, then according to Rabbi Yehuda, you shouldn't get Malchus at all. If you eat the right side and then the right side from another animal, why are you being Seifik Arban? If it was Mesafkele Rabbi Yehuda, you shouldn't get anything. So, the hanacha in this tashma is not consistent with the hanacha in the previous tashma. We know that. The previous tashma, the Gemara was bringing a raya from the real-time iboya of the Gemara. Here we're bringing a raya from a brayso that the Gemara actually introduced when it was poshed the iboya. But either way, so says the brayso again, in the event that somebody ate 2 gidim, 2 yerechos, 2 behemos, according to the Tanakama, According to Rabbi Yehuda, it's only Arba. What's the case? Is it talking about which would explain why Seifik Shmoinim, my time with Rabbi Yehuda, the Amar Arba and Vesulai. Then why would Rabbi Yehuda hold you only get Arba? If there were 2 Asrais, that's like the Nazir that drank Revius Yain, of course he's going to get Malchus twice. Why are we going to get one? Elas up the Gemara Pshita. It has to be. There's no other way to learn. It's talking about where it all happened in one shot, and there was 1 Hasra. And that would explain why Rabbi Yehuda holds Arba'im. But the problem is, then why does Tanakama hold Shmoyim, man Tanakam, Rabbanon Tigala the Sumchis, and again the same cheshbon. Is the Tanakama the Rabbanon of our Mishnah who is Chiluk on Sumchis? It can't be. Because Ma Hasam the Guf of Mechlakim, Madach by Yosef Esbenoi, there was a tzag Guf of Mechlakim, Pat Rabbanon hold its potter. Hach over here like Kolshkein, that it should be potter from a second Malchus El Olav Sumchisi. It must be a Sumchis. So it has to be this Tanakama over here in that price and Gidanosha must be of the opinion that one hasra, you could still get two sets of malchus. You're going to be chayiv two chatois. Hence, says the Gemara, this is where Rabbi Yosef saw that Tzadaz Ashit in the Welt, and that's why he took on the more mechudesh understanding of what Shita Sumchas is in the Mishnah on that Pei Beis Amid Aleph. But the Gemara says, no, there's no raya from here either. Strike three. I'll tell you. This price is also talking about where he ate it Bezeh Chazeh. And that's Pshat in the Chachamim. The Tanakam of this price. Ochal shnei gidim b'shtei yureches b'shtei behemois b'zeh chazeh b'shtei hasrois. Everybody holds soifig shmainim. What's the problem? Rabbi Yehuda imei in a soifig al arba'im. That makes any sense. L'chayri did two aveiros, or even if it's the same aveir, but it was two hasrois, so of course it should be soifig shmainim. No, it's talking about b'zeh chazeh. Udika amrit. My time with the Rabbi Yehuda. It's talking about Kigoin the less big kazayas, where one of these two gid anoshes didn't have a kazayas. So what? The Tanya, and for that you have to have some bekiyas in the world of gid anosha, because in that sugya there's a brisa that says as follows: if somebody would eat a full gidanosha, a gidanosha shalem, but there was no kazayas, chayiv be chayiv malchus. Rabbi Yehuda achiyeba kazayas. Rabbi says no, you only be chayiv if there's a kazayas. You want to know what the machloikis Rabbi Yehuda and the Tanakamas in this price? A whole different machloikis. It's not a mesechtes makis diga machloikis. This is a machloikis that's very local, it's regional, it's specific, it's nuanced, very micro to the world of gidanosha, and it's Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim l'shita sayu that hold, or that debated, and that argued whether the Isser Gidanosha requires kazayis, like almost all machalis asuros, or maybe if someone eats a gid shalem, that's a davar chashav if neyatzmai, maybe that would be enough for the person to be chayiv. The Tanakama holds yichayiv for a gid shalem. Therefore, achal shnei gidim mishtei yireches mishtei behemis, where one had a kazayis, the other one didn't have a kazayis. As long as the other one is a gid shalem, who cares? Soifik shmainim. Rabbi Yehuda Omer that if only one of them had a kazayis, inu soifik alo rabam. That is like a funny roundabout way of presenting what they already argued in a more straightforward way about raya that is shita sumchas in the Welt you don't have. The bottom line is Rabbi Yosef tried proving that there's a shita in the world that undermines and disagrees with this whole premise, with the introduction that we gave to the daf. At the end of the day, it's Rabbi Yosef's chiddush. Abaye is not happy with it. For those that learn Gemara every day, shouldn't be stunned that Rabbi Yosef said a chiddush and that Abaye wasn't so happy about it. But the bottom line is, exhale. So as relates to raid, and really, a raid bite klali, as it pertains to the sugyas of oisai ve'espinai. So the Mishnah, in the beginning of the parak, after it introduced the basic idea of oisai ve'espinai, said ketzar. Ketzar, how does oisai ve'espinai play itself out? And the Mishnah went and gave 12 different scenarios, juggling cases where the animals were chulin, kachim, where the shchitas happened bifnim, meaning in the azara, or outside of the azara, and what the halacha would be in each one of these cases. The first of the 12 cases was the most obvious and the simplest. Mishnah said, Ketzad hashoichet oisei ve'espinoi chulin bachotz. In the event that both of these animals were chulin, and both shchitas took place bachotz, so the halacha is shneim ksherim. Both of these animals are going to be kosher, meaning you'll be allowed to eat the meat of these animals. Vasheni soivigas arbon. And as it relates to the second one, you're going to be soivigas arbon. This is the classic case of oisav esbenoi as it relates to chulin. Very, very straightforward. This is not in Yerushalayim. It's not Bizman Sheveis HaMikdash HaYakayim. It's in the Zman of the Chorban. Somebody goes and he shechts two animals that are chulin, oisei vesbenai. You want to eat the meat of the animal, you're allowed to eat the meat of the animal. However, the second person who did the Ma'aseh Aveira, he's going to get malchus for what it is that he did. Rashi in the Mishnah, Dibra Maschel Shneim Ksherim, says, Mishum debayla misna seifa Shneim Psul. Being that in the course of the Mishnah is going to mention, in the other 11 cases, times where if you shecht an animal, in a scenario of Oisei Ves Benai, the meat of the animal is going to be pasul. So it's for that reason, but Derech Agav, we mentioned in the first case, Shneim Ksherim. In other words, Rashi was bothered. Why does the Mishnah say, Hashoichet Oisei Ves Benai, Chulin Bachut Shneim Ksherim? Why would you think they're not kosher? What would be a siba to say it's not kosher? Of course the meat is kosher. It's true the second person was over in Aveira. He was over Oisei Ves Benai. But why would you think that the meat should be suddenly aser ba'achila? So Rashi, there's no reason in the world that you would think it. There is no havamina at all to even suggest something like this. If that's the case, why did the Mishnah say Shneim Ksherim? The reason the Mishnah says Shneim Ksherim is because the Mishnah is going to mention a lot of cases where the meat is going to be pasul. We did shchitas chutz, we yeshechted chulin b'fnim. There's going to be a lot of cases where there's going to be psul. So agav, we're going to mention cases where the meat is going to be pasul. So we mention over here, we state the obvious that this meat is going to be kosher. Tosfos on Daf Pei Amud Aleph, which is really shaykh to the Mishnah, but Tosfos on Daf Pei Amud Aleph brings Rashi, and Tosfos says, I respectfully disagree. The reason the Mishnah said, Chulin Bachut Shneim Ksherim, so kedaita, because I could have had a havamina, the mifsal sheni, that maybe the second one should be pasul, mishum lo yisoichal kol toyeva. Keda'ama beperak kol abasa, the Kaman Daf Kuf Tes Vav Amud Aleph. The Gemara in Daf Kuf Tes Vav Amud Aleph brings a drasha from a pasuk in Dvarim Yud Daled Gimel that says Lo yisoichal kol toyeva, and we learn from there that anything that was noitzer, any basar that came about be'isr, the halach is you're not allowed to eat. If that's the case, Tosfos, it's partial why the Mishnah says Shneim Ksherim, because we're bavarning that for whatever reason that lav of Lo yisoichal kol toyeva doesn't apply, and therefore the meat is going to be kosher. So Zokt Tosfos that Rashi said Shneim Ksherim, there's no chiddush, it's all mentioned, but Derech Agav, I disagree. There is a chiddush. The chiddush is the sheni. The sol kedaitach the mifsal sheni, because you were over the isra oisei ves benai when you shechted the sheni. Kamash malan that you're not going to be over the isra. Now, even according to Tosfos, this is something that's being mentioned with Derech Agav, because the Mishnah says Shneim Ksherim. So the second one is a chiddush that you don't say lo yisoichal kol toyeva. But I'll kopanim once I needed to say that the second one is kosher. So I'm going to say only the sheni is kosher. That's not true. The first one's also kosher. So it's for that reason the Mishnah went ahead and the Mishnah said Shneim Ksherim. In Chedushi Reb Kiva Eger, so there's a Hagah that it says on the bottom is Mitalmid Echad. It was written by one of the Talmid Reb Kiva Eger, and he brings, printed in Chedushi Reb Kiva Eger over here, Chulin Daf Ayin Ches Amud Aleph, that he heard from his Rebbe a different Mahalach to explain what the Chiddush is, why you would have thought that if somebody shechts oisoi ve'es benoi, maybe the halach is it shouldn't be okay. And it's based on a well-known sugya in Shas, in the first parak in Masechtas Tmura. It's a machlokes Abaye v'Rava. I kol milsa da'avid rachmana loy savid. I ovid mahani or I ovid loy mahani. This is a machlokes Abaye v'Rava, like the machlokes yish loy midas have yish or loy have yish is a machlokes Abaye v'Rava. This is a global machlokes which comes up in the world of Reid, literally in Kol HaTorah Kula. Anytime the Torah says you're not allowed to do something, if you go ahead and you do it anyways, Yovid Mahani or Yovid Loy Mahani. So Reb Kiva Eger said that Rashi and Tosfos are both muching. What's the chiddush of the Mishnah that if somebody shechts oisei ves benoi, shneim bachutz, the halacha is shneim ksherim, it's pashut that it's kosher. So Reb Kiva Eger, it's not pashut, because the second person that went ahead and he shechted, he was over in Issa Deiraisa of oisei ves benoi loisa shchatu b'yem echad. So I would have thought that kol milsud amar achmano loisavid Yovid Loy Mahani, the Torah would say the shchita is not a kosher shchita. That it's going to be kosher. Now there's a longer version of this Reb Kiva Eger which ties into Reid that we spoke about in the beginning of the Masechta on Daf Yudal Amud Aleph. Hasheichet b'Shabbos afal pisha shchitasik sheira harezim eschai benavsha in the Veltz Kasha. Why don't you say Yovel Loy Mahani? Reb Kiva Eger is mafalful in this. It's a very geschmack Reb Kiva Eger in light of Reid that we spoke about in this Chabur already. Iron Sham. But the bottom line is Reb Kiva Eger says a second mahalach to explain why it is that you would think that maybe if someone's over Oisav Es Benoi, the Shechita should be a Shechita Psula. It's based on the Shas Sugya of Kol Milsa Dam Rachman Olei Savid I Ovid Loi Mahani. In other words, Rashi said Shneim Ksherim, the whole thing was mentioned with Derech Agav. Tosfos and Rab Kiva Eger are both being Megalatas. No, could be it's not so Agavdik. Could be there's a Chiddush. There's a Chiddush in the Shechita of the second animal that you would have thought maybe the boss is going to be puzzled. Tosfos said based on a Gemara and Kuftes Vav Amar Aleph, it's a lav in the Torah Loi Soichal Kol Teyeva. Kiva Eger said based on the Shas Sugya of Kol Misl Dam Rachman Olei Savid I Ovid Loi Mahani. Stating that, if you take a look at the Rambam, and the Rambam is right in the beginning of Perek Yud Beis of Hilchos Shechita. That's where the Rambam discusses the laws of Oisei V'Espenoi. Hashoichet Oisei V'Espenoi b'yoyim echad, habasam mutar b'achila. If somebody shechts Oisei V'Espenoi b'yoyim echad, the basa is going to be mutar b'achila. V'ashoichet loike shenema Oisei V'Espenoi lois shchatu b'yoyim echad. Ve'inei loike ela al shchitas ha'achrein. It's only the second person that gets malchus. V'chulei v'chulei v'chulei. The Torah in Siman Tez Zayin brings L'shoinei Azov Shal HaRambam. And the Bach in his Agah on the Torah says that from the way the Rambam presented the halacha, it sounds a little bit like the Rambam held that there's a chiddush in the fact that if someone shechts Oisei V'Espenoi, the mutter or the basar is going to be mutar b'achil. Now says the Bach, I know Rashi, Tosfos already discussed this, but from the Dakus Haloshin of the Rambam, I think I see a little bit more. Because the Rambam says, Hashoichet Oisei V'Espenoi b'yoyim echad, habasa mutar b'achila. The Rambam doesn't say the basa of the sheni is mutar b'achila. The Rambam says, basa mutar b'achila. It sounds like all of the basa. Side the Rishon, side the sheni. And it sounds a little bit, says the Bach, that the Rambam holds that there's some chiddush over here that I need to tell you, that not only is the basa of the sheni going to be mutar b'achila, but the basa of the Rishon is also going to be mutar b'achila. And says the Bach, to me this is a Tmiyah Gedayla. In other words, we spoke out that Rashi was mefarish in the Mishnah. There's no chiddush at all in the fact that if somebody shechts Oisei V'Espenoi, unless there was shchitei chutz or shchitas pnim, that the boss can be mutar b'achila. Why would you think it's also b'achila? And even though the Mishnah said Shneim Ksherim was only mentioned b'derech Agav, even Tosfos that went ahead and Tosfos said no, there's a chiddush. Tosfos said the chiddush is shchitas hasheni. That is l'shoinei azov shel Tosfos. But that there should be a chiddush that the boss of the Rishon. And by the way, even Reb Kiva Eger's time of Kol Milsa Dam Rachman Olei Savid, that's all in the Sheni, where you are over the Isser. But the Rishon, which was done beheaded, there's no chiddush in the world that should somehow be also that I would need to tell you it's mutter. The Bach saw in the Rambam, very subtle, that the Rambam says habasa mutar b'achila. He didn't say the basar hasheni. He said the basa is mutar b'achila, which sounds like all the basas mean mutar b'achila. And the Bach wonders out loud: is the Rambam trying to tell me that there's a chiddush saying the basar of the Rishon inside the basar of the Sheni? L'maisa, the Bach says it's mistaber that this is not a diak, and the Rambam is probably just quoting the Lashon HaMishnah, Kedarke B'Kodesh, and the Torah is quoting the Lashon HaRambam. Everyone's just quoting everybody, but the Torah is quoting the Rambam, who's quoting Rabbi Yudah Nasi. So the bottom line is, it could be there isn't such a diak to be had, and whatever pshat in the Mishnah is, that's going to be pshat in the Rambam. But l'maisa, the Bach mutches a little bit. It sounds like a basar mutter in the Bach's Havana of how the Rambam should have presented this halacha. He felt that there was a little bit of a diak here, and if that's the case, it's definitely something worth exploring a little bit. Is there a tzad to say that I could have had a havamina that in the world of Oisei V'Espenoi, not only the basar of the second animal that I shechted should be mutter, but maybe there's even a chiddush that the basar of the first one is mutter as well. So I saw in the Sefer Mishnas Maseches Chulin, that's from Agoyin, Rabbi Somer Garbuz, and this is in Perek Lamed. He has a whole Perek on the lumdus of understanding Oisei V'Espenoi, and as he speaks out there, it's yitachin that once you come to understanding a little better the lumdus, how Oisei V'Espenoi works, it would be a little bit of a pshat in the Bachstik, in the Rambam, and really a completely new, albeit simple Havana in this lav of Oisei V'Espenoi Lois Shchatu B'Yemech. Yesh lachkar, as it relates to the lav of Oisei V'Espenoi, what is the cheftza, using that word very, very specifically, of the Isser? Is the cheftza of the Isser that when you shech the mother, now the Torah says the child becomes a chaticha d'isura, or when you check the child, now the mother becomes the chaticha d'isura, as if to say that when a person is over, the guf ha'isur is shechting the child after you shechted the mother, obviously. The guf ha'isur is shechting the mother after you shechted the child. The chefza of the isur oisei v'espanoy is the shechatu b'yemechad is don't shech the mother and the child. It just so happens that if you only shech the mother, then it's not in play yet to have the isur. Or if you did shech the mother, then it's not in play yet to say don't shech this, because I'm allowed to shech this. It's only once I shech this that I'm not allowed to shech that. But the point is that when somebody goes ahead and shechs oisei ves benoi, the isser that he did was not just that he shechted benoi. The isser that he did was that he shechted oisei ves benoi. What's the isser? The isser is shchitas benoi noch oisei. Or the Isser is Shchitas Oisoi Ve'esbenoi. It plays itself out the same way. It's only a Shailon Lumdis. It plays itself out that after you Shech Oisoi, you're not allowed to Shech Benoi. And by the way, only the person that Shechs Benoi is going to get Malchus. We're not debating that. But the question is, what is the Gufa Isser? What's the Chefza Isser? What's the Gather of the Isser? Pick your cliche, pick your cinema. What is the Isser? The Isser is Shchitas Benoi La'achas Shchitas Oisoi, or the Isser is Shchitas Oisoi Ve'esbenoi. The truth is, from the Pshutei Shel Mikra of the it sounds a little bit like the Isser is don't shecht oisoi ve'esbenoi. Oisoi ve'esbenoi, lo yiseh shchatu b'yomechad. It doesn't say don't shecht benoi after you shechted oisoi. The gufa Isser, the proverbial oisoichal chazer is oisoi ve'esbenoi, lo yiseh shchatu b'yomechad, which sounds like Oisoi is included, part and parcel of the chefts of the Isser, in as much as Benai is included and is part and parcel of the Isser. Oh, but this is l'chayra, a very basic hakira hayadua in the world of Oisoi ves Benai. Is the gufa Isser not to shech Benai after you shechted Oisoi, or is the gufa Isser not to shech Oisoi ves Benai? So Rabbi Samar Garbuz said, I'll bring you kama v'kama rayas, that the gufa Isser is not just not to shech benoi after you shechted oisai, but that the gufa is not to shecht oisai ves benoi. Just mention a few. In the Sugyet's Mavur, that the Gemara needed a pasuk to teach me that the Issa oisai ves benoi is true. Loishna if the same person shechted oisai ves benoi, and loishna if one person shechted oisai and another person shechted benoi. Fragt Rabbi Yisrael Garbuz, l'chayr b'muschel rishon. What's Pash Pshan that happened? Why would you think that the only time there's an isner to shecht oisei ves benoi is if I shechted oisei, now I'm not allowed to shech benoi. But if you shechted oisei, I'm allowed to shech benoi. What's Pash Pshan? L'chayr the isner oisei ves benoi is that once oisei was shached, now benoi becomes a chefz of isner. So nobody should be allowed to shecht it. If you go into the time of the Kra of the Ramban and Pirush HaTorah and the Rambam and the Meira, again, there's no Havana. What should be the whether one person shechted both or if two people shechted both. But if you're going to tell me that the chefs of the Isser is oisoi vespenoi lo yisishchatu b'yoymechad, that one person's not allowed to go ahead, and that you're not allowed to go ahead and shecht oisoi vespenoi, so then there's makom to say that the only time this Isser is going to be true is if one person did the whole Avera. Because if Reuven needs a chatzi zayis of chazer and Shimon needs a chatzi zayis of chazer, it's not mitzdaref to an Isser. So it's poshut, there would have been a hava meaning that you need one person to go ahead and shecht oisoi vespenoi. But if two people are going to shech the oisei ves benoi, there's going to be no way in the world. There's going to be no way in the world to go ahead and make us out starfus. From the fact that we need a limud to tell me that that there's an isser oisei ves benoi, even if one person shechted oisei and the other person shechted benoi, that's a raya l'chayra, a very starka netiyah to the tzad, that the isser oisei ves benoi is sai oisei and sai benoi. Therefore, you would have thought that one person has to do the complete isser, but one person would shecht oisei and the other person would shecht benoi. Each person is doing a whole b'maisa, a half plus a half. In this world, is not going to be mitzdarf to a whole. A second raya, or a second ha'ara. There's a big discussion in the Achronim. If somebody goes and he shechts oisoi ves benoi bevas achas, is he going to be chayiv for the issa oisoi ves benoi or not? The two shchitas happen vas achas. Are you chayiv or you're not chayiv? The Tvu Shor in Siman Tezayim brings a raya from a Rambam that we spoke a lot about last week. The Rambam in Perik Yud Beis of Hilchos Shchita, that's where the sugis of Oisei ves benara, halacha yud. But the Rambam says, Mutter lishchot behema muberes. Why? Because uber is aver me'imai. Straight to Tvu Shor. If you're going to tell me that it's asur to shecht or that there's no problem of Oisei Ves Benoi when the Shechita happens b'vas achas. So why the Rambam even have to bavar that it's mutter to shechte beim muberes? And he's coming to be mechadish. You don't have to worry about this Oisei Ves Benoi. When you shech the mother, that is the Shechita on the over. So it's one ma'isa Shechita. So it's Muchach said the Tvorshar that as it relates to this Oisei Ves Benoi, it's true whether it happened b'vas achas or it happened b'zeh achazeh. Zogen the Gedolei Achroinim that l'chura bishloima if you're going to tell me that the Isser of Oisei Ves Benoi is don't shecht Oisei and Benoi, meaning Oisei is part and parcel of the Isser, just like Benoi is. So it makes sense. Mali if I did it b'zeh achazeh, Mali if I did it b'vas achas. But if Oisei is really not nichlal in the Isser is to shecht Benoi after you shechted Oisei. If I shechted b'vas achas, Benoi never became a chaticha d'Yisura. When did it become a chefetz of Isser that I should be over now? It only becomes a chefetz of Isser after I shecht Oisei. I shechted Oisei and Benoi b'vas achas. Now the truth is, this is really totally in a sugya of kol sheyeshnoi b'zeh achar zeh. Kol she'enoi b'zeh achar zeh, afilu b'vas achas enoi. Right? This would be a good example of that, because I wouldn't be able to shecht one after the other. So if that's the case, it could be afilu b'vas achas enoi. But Kiyadua, there's a big Reb Chaim on this. It's not pashut that you always say kol she'enoi b'zeh achar zeh, afilu b'vas achas enoi. So the fum riyata, from the fact that you see that for sure is grace raya from the Rambam Mashoichem Uberes, that the halacha is that if you're going to go ahead and you're going to shecht the Oisei Ves Benoi b'vas achas, it would be included in Oisei Ves Benoi. It's probably because the Isser is Sayan the Oisei, Sayan the Benoi. It's not that it's only the Benoi becomes Asa and that the Benoi becomes Asa la'achas shchitas Oisei. So for that reason, Mali if it was b'zeh achazeh, Mali if it was b'vas achas. There's another Raya, Gedoyla, that the Gedolei Achronim bring, and that's from today's daf. Today's daf, the whole second half of the daf, the fun part of today's daf, discuss Shita Sumchas in the Mishnah. Shita Sumchas in the Mishnah, which Rashi says is really Pamayim Bahava, but we'll mention the second mention of Sumchas in the Mishnah in the event that somebody went ahead and shechted a grandmother and then a granddaughter, and then afterwards went ahead and shechted the mother. So according to the Chachamim, you only like Arban. According to Sumchas, you're going to be like Ishmael. The Gemara had a tzad, a very stark tzad. In fact, it's Shitas Rav Yosef in the Sugya, that the side of Shita Sumchas is, it's because Sumchas holds, Achal Shnei Zeisei Chelev, Behelam Echad, Yichayev Shtayim. So that, although in the case of the Mishnah, there was only one hasra, but at the same time, it's no different than one hasra, and you ate two kezaisim of chelev, where the halach is that you're going to be chayav. Freit Reb Elchanan, freit Reb Shlomo Hayman, freit the Gedolei Arosh Yeshivas. They all ask, Mamish Keish Echad, Belev Echad, Behelam Echad, they all ask the same kasha. And that is, I don't understand Pashup Pshat in the Gemara's Sushtel, Achal Shnei Zeisei Chelev Behelam Echad, to the halach of Oisei Ves Benoi. In the case where a person ate two Zeisei, again, this goes to the core of understanding a little bit of the lumdus of today's daf. If somebody eats two Zeisim Behelam Echad, or if somebody would eat two Zeisim and it was done with one Hasra, he did two Averos. He ate this kazayas, he ate that kazayas. There were two heftzes of Averos that he did. Being that there's two heftzes of Averos that he did, there's makom to say you should get malchus twice. The kash is there was one hasra, good, achal shnei zeisei chelev, behelam echad yichayev shtayim. But there are two Averos. What are the two Averos? I ate this kazayas, I ate that kazayas. In the case of Oisei Ves Benoi, in Sumchas' case, you shechted one behemah. How were you chayev malchus twice for shechting one behemah? There's one cheftz of Isser that you did. You shechted one behemah. There's two sibas. That's like very falam of it. Mechatesi. The Gemara comes with a fum riyata with this massive tzushta. So, you know, Pshat and Sumchas is Achal Shnei Zeisei Chelev Behelam Echad Yichayev Shtayim. Mechatesa, that's a tzushta. Over there, you ate two kezesim of chelev. Over here, all you did was you shechted one animal. Abazog in the Rosh Hashivas, that's true if the cheftza of the Isser of Oisei Ves Benoi is, it's just the second animal that you shechted. So if that is what the cheftza of the Isser is, I shechted one animal. One animal. I hear it's a good order. How can I be chayiv two malchus, one animal? I do with two asrois, who cares? I still shechted one animal. But here alam this. If the way Oisei Ves Benoi works is that when I shecht Benoi, kum tois, Oisei Ves Benoi was the Isser, and it gloi milsa that when I shechted Oisei, I also did an Aveira. That's part and parcel of the Gufa Aveira. Then it's Pasha Tetzushtel. Because when I go ahead and I shecht the mother, so it comes out, I'm doing two sets of Aveiras now. Now with Gloi Milsa, the Baba and the mother was an Aveira. And now with Gloi Milsa, that the mother and the Enoka was an Aveira. Where it's how the two Cheftzes of Aveiras is in the Gloi Milsa of Afreya, then now the grandmother and the granddaughter were also Maisa Aveiras. If, however, nothing is being Chal in the grandmother and the granddaughter, they're not included in the Cheftzah of the Isser. So all I did was one Shchita on the mother. One Shchita on the mother is less than Ochal Shnei Seisei Chelav. Over there, at least I ate two Kazaisim of Chelav. Over here, I didn't even need two Kazaisim of Chelav. And the truth is, just from the Gemara's Sushtal, that the Gemara calls it Gufa Mechlakim. Right? The Gemara had it said throughout the Sugya that is an element of Gufa Mechlakim. So Rashi says it's two Sibas of Isser. But Lefia now, the Gufa Mechlakim is much sharper. It's not just two Sibas. Oh, this mother is Asr mitzad the Shchita of the grandmother and Asr mitzad the Shchita of the granddaughter. When you shecht this mother, now there's a gufa isser of grandmother, mother, and there's a gufa isser of mother and granddaughter. It's actually chal in gufa machlakim. It's not just two sibas. That's why Rashi learns the sugya. It's more than two sibas. It's actually chal. But the bottom line is this havana of Oisei Vespenoli, it's a shchat b'yemecha, that the gufa isser is not only in the benai, but it's also in the oisei. This is the hanachas even apin of understanding the lumdis a lot better. Zog in the Gedolei Rosh Hashivas over here in today's daf and Chulin daf pei beis amid beis. Another murder the Geraya. The Chassam Sofer, right here in the Sugya, on Daf Pei Beis, he asks a bomb kasha. He asks, why isn't it? Mishnah said that if somebody would go ahead and somebody would shecht the grandmother and then the granddaughter, and then he would shecht the mother. So what's the halacha? The halacha is that according to the Chachamim, you're only going to be chayev arba'im, but according to Sumchis, you're going to be chayev shmeinim. Freit the Heilige Chassam Sofer. L'chayra, why don't we say ein iser chal al iser on the second iser? Bomb cash. When you shechted the grandmother first, the daughter became aser. There's an iser da'iraisa of oisei vespenoi lois neshchatu b'yaymecha. Now you're going to go ahead. You're going to shech the granddaughter. So what do you want? That the mother should be aser because oisei vespenoi is shchatu b'yaymecha. It's already aser because of oisei vespenoi is shchatu b'yaymecha. Fake the Heilige Chassam Sofer. It's ein iser chal al iser, and he mutches does the Chassam Sofer right here in the sugya with this kasha in Chedusha Reb Shloima. In the back, so there's a whole list of Ksavim V'Tshuvas. In Ksavim V'Tshuvas in Siman Lamed Aleph. So he brings a teretz that he heard from the Afikei Yam's son. To this kasha. The Afikei Yam asks this kasha, and the Baal Mechaber of the famous Litvish Sefer, Afikei Yam, his son wrote a Haggah on his father's Sefer, and who was Mechaber to the Chassam Sofer's kasha. One, he said, in the Sechal Alisser, and he said, Moirdik. He said, Bishloim, if you're going to tell me that the way Oisei Vespenai works is, the Isser is only on the Benai. That's what the Torah is telling you don't do. If you shecht Oisei, now don't go ahead and shech Benai. The Gufa Isser is the Shchita Saben. So then it's a Murder Kasha. The Shchita Saben became Asner when you shechted the Baba. So how's it becoming Asner again when you went ahead and you shechted the Einichel? But if the Isser Meikara was Oisei Vespenai, that don't go ahead and shecht Oisei Vespenai, the Isser Benai was not Nischad after you shechted the mother. When you woke up in the morning, there was an isser. Don't shech this oisav esbenoi and don't shech that oisav esbenoi. There was no one isser that was chal before the other isser. As mezon zog and yet ein isser chal al isser. If the isser is only not to shech benoi, that isser's first chal after you shech oisai. But if the isser is on oisai and on benoi, when's that isser chal? When you have an oisev as benoi, that second, when this behemoth was noy little mazel tov, at that point it was chal be'issa, oisev as benoi. Doesn't pass now to go ahead and to say, ein issa chal al issa. The bottom line is, if you go through in this Sefer Mishnahs, Masechtas Chulin, from Rabbi Samar Garbush Shlita, he brings kama v'kama rais. This is all from Gedolei Rosh Hashivas, where they all named on this tzad, and that is that the Issa Oisav Esmenoi, like the Pshutei Shal Mikra, it's not that after you shecht Oisoi, now it's Chal Issa don't shecht. No, the Issa is don't shecht Oisoi Vespenoi, and really the Issa is on Oisoi in as much as it's Benoi. Now, in the world of how the Einish, how the Malchus plays itself out, it's only the second one that gets Malchus, like the Rambam says. Hashoichet Oisei Vespenoi b'yayimechad. When it comes to the Malchus, it's only the Shchitas Achim that's going to get Malchus. But as it relates to the Gufa Isser, the Gufa Isser is true for the Rishon, the Gufa Isser is true for the Sheni as well. But the bottom line is, the Mishnah said that if somebody shechts Chulin bachutz, the halacha is shneim ksherim. Rashi says, chulin v'chut shneim ksherim, it's pshita, it's agav, the rest of the Mishnah, where you're going to have a bunch of cases where there's going to be psul, so that's why we mentioned over here shneim ksherim. Tosfos says, no, you don't have to say that. There's a chiddush. The chiddush is that the sheni is kosher. Why would you have thought the sheni is possible? It's because you would have thought that maybe lo yisoichal kol toyeva, so kamash malan, that you're not going to have an issa. Now the first one, and a chinami, that's only mentioned b'derech. But we mentioned that the Bach was medayik in the lashon of the Rambam. Hashoichet oisav es b'nei b'yaymecha rabasa mut it's mashma side the bus of the sheni, side the bus of the rishon, and the Bach mutches in the Rambam. What's the chiddush in the rishon? Tosfos was megalatas what the chiddush in the sheni might be. Oh, but what's the chiddush in the rishon? Zok Rabbi Samar Gabush Shlita that yesh shloim that we mentioned earlier. Reb Kiva Eiger, where Reb Kiva Eiger said that could be, you could say a numahalach of why there's a chiddush over Yishneim Ksherim, because so katay the chaminu kom bil sadam rachmad loy saveri avad loy mahani kamashman, that even though you're over this oisav esbenoi, still the halach is it's going to be good. And if you're going to nemon in Londis that the isser of oisav esbenoi after you shech the sheni is not only on the sheni, it's on the rishon also. The sheni is the only one that's loika, but as it relates to the isser sayin the rishon sayin the sheni, then there's mukim to say that if you would hold kom bil sadam rachmad loy saveri avad loy mahani, once you shech the sheni, even the basar of the rishon should be aser, because the avad loy mahani is true for anything that's included in the gufa isser, and the gufa isser is true for the rishon, and it's true for the sheni as well. Kamash malon the Mishnah. Zok the Mishnah shneim ksherim. Not only the sheni is kosher, the rishon is kosher. They're all kosher. Why would you have thought the rishon and the sheni are both possible? Because I would have thought kom misudam rachmad loy sabri avlay mahani, and that's what the Rambam was coming to say. Hashoichet oisay vespenay b'yayimechad habata basam mutabachila. Even though side the oisay and side the benoy are included in the gufa isser, what the Torah said, oisay vespenay tzishchata b'yayimechad. So both of them were in violation now. Now, all the oinshim are only on the sheni because you can't punish the guy when he did when he did the rishon. It was a halba ma'isa. Can't get punished for the halba ma'isa. Oh, but gloy milsalam afreya, that oisoi was part of this oisoi vespenoy lois nishchat b'yayimechad. And if that's the case, I would have thought maybe it should be pasul kamash molan, that for whatever reason we don't say kol milsadam rachmad lois sabri avilay mahani. That's the chiddush shneim ksherim, sai shneim ksherim, the sheni. Sai shneim ksherim, the rishon, based on Reb Kiva Eiger's teretz b'shem Talmud Echad, and taking the one tzad that seems to be the ikr tzad in the Rosh Hashivas as relates to the Chakira Hayudua in the sugya of Oisei Vespenai.